Hi, class. This is week 7. This is our last lecture week. Next week is week 8. There will not be a discussion board or a live lecture that week because we're wrapping everything up. I've really enjoyed walking this journey with you. I've appreciated the things that you guys are learning based on what I'm reading from your discussion boards. I can tell that you're taking in a lot of information, which is great, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize it with your future clients. Like I've said probably about 100 times, and I'll continue to say, all these subjects are going to be things that are going to come up. You're going to be working with people who are different from you, who are dealing with a lot of different situations that are causing them probably some level of sexual frustration. And so to be able to work with them well and to um, just be able to be compassionate and a good clinician, we're going to have to be ready for these things, right? And so I just hope you walk away from this course a little bit more prepared. There is also going to be an option to take the course evaluation at the end of the course. And so that can get you 10 extra credit points. I'll put that in announcements as well. So we're just wrapping everything up. It's been a great 8 weeks. I hope to see you all again. So this week we're talking about infidelity and just everything that happens with that. And as a clinician, you'll definitely come across this, whether it be in couples therapy or individual therapy. Um, and it can be really hard, especially if any of you have a history with infidelity, meaning you've been a perpetrator or you've been perpetrated on, or maybe you're a child where your parents split up because of infidelity. And so I just want to suggest always when you're working with things that are very close to home, just to make sure like you're handling your things so that your own stuff doesn't come out in therapy with somebody else, because that's projection. We don't necessarily want to project our issues onto our clients, nor do we want to create any sort of situation that maybe isn't really about our client, but it's about us, and we want when then we have unhealthy countertransference, things of that nature. So just a little disclaimer: any sort of issue that you're going through personally and then a client has that same issue, you really got to check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? We don't want to be unethical, things of that nature. But going back to infidelity, infidelity is huge. And we talked about this a little bit with pornography, but infidelity can look like nowadays, it can look like an actual physical affair, which could be some level of physical interaction with somebody and another person outside of their spouse or partner. It can be an emotional affair, which is usually somebody that the other person has had some level of a connection with on an emotional level that, again, is not their partner. Or we can have people consider it cheating when someone's looking at pornography. That's, some people don't consider that cheating. Some people do. That's really up to the couple and the relationship. And if someone feels that way, they feel that betrayal, they feel like that trust is gone. That's how they feel. And we're not going to try to tell them that they're wrong for feeling that way. So now you're the therapist, and this is brought into your lap to fix, right? And it's not our job to fix people. A lot of times people will come in wanting us to fix something, but we are just the toolbox that maybe holds the tools, and they still need to be the handyman. Okay. So just a reminder, don't take on that pressure of you're the person responsible to fix it, because you're not. Plus, it took a lot of things to get a couple or relationship to the point of where they show up in your office. A lot of times people wait way too long. And so you aren't responsible for what got them there. You're just the person that has the tools to help them to fix it if they so choose. What's hard with couples once they get to this place of there's been an infidelity is sometimes one person's already out and one person is still in it. And so that sometimes is hard to work with. And so a lot of times when we work with couples, it's letting them know that you can hold the hope for the relationship. It's on them to do the work. One couples therapy session is not going to change anything. Especially when there's been an infidelity of some sort, you're going to need a long time of therapy. Okay. It's not one session, maybe a total of 6 months, maybe, where they get to a place where they can make decisions or they know where they stand. But one session is going to do nothing. And so when you have couples that go one time and they're like, well, it didn't work. It's like, well, because you went one time. Like nothing works once, right? Um, it's a process, and trust is the foundation of any relationship. There is no trust, there is no relationship. That's just the facts. Okay? That's just the facts. So we have to be ready to kind of not sell, but just let people know like, hey, if this is something you really want to change, what you really want to work on, it's going to be a commitment. It's going to probably get harder before it's going to get better, but we got to really work through things because trust is essential. And so, as a therapist, and we're working through this, I always tell couples, you didn't have a perfect relationship and then an affair happened. Most of the time, there's been things going on that lead up to an affair. That doesn't make an affair justifiable. It's never okay to have an affair. And that should never be something somebody does within a relationship. However, a lot of times there's been things not going well in the relationship. And as a result, someone found comfort in somebody else or found a release or found someone they could talk to or whatever. Most people do not get married with an anticipation of divorce. However, divorce happens. However, affairs happen. And what do we say? What do I mean by when I say happen? It's gradual usually. It's a phone call, it's a lunch date, it's messaging back and forth on a social media platform. It's these little things that seem harmless, and it's like it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, until it leads up into it being something that is more than what someone can handle. Okay? Maybe some of you can relate to this. You've had these experiences in your own life, or you've had something like this happen to you. It's very hurtful. And it usually derives from something was going on in the relationship that was causing it to be distance, or maybe someone didn't feel heard or didn't feel seen or didn't feel desired. And so as a result, these things happen, or they fight all the time, they argue, the relationship already wasn't good, whatever that may be. But here they are in your office. And so we have to talk about kind of what caused the situation. For the person who finds out the information about the affair, it's very overwhelming. The person who maybe confesses the affair, they know that they're going to confess it. They know they're going to say something. And so they've had time to process, to mourn, all these things. So oftentimes when they finally say the information, they may almost feel relieved. The problem is the person getting this information is now like very overwhelmed because they're like, you may feel relieved. I now feel like I have all of this on me, right? Which is not a great feeling. And that can cause some level of like resentment because it's like my life was fine until you told me this news. I had no clue. Sometimes when all this is going on, the person I'll use a buzzword that's said often is gaslight. No, I'm not having an affair. No, I'm not cheating. No, I'm not doing this. You're crazy. All those kinds of things. Come to find out it was happening. So not only is the person hurt that one, someone's been unfaithful, but then two, then you made me feel like a crazy person when I was picking up on some of these things, right? Not a great thing, not a great feeling. And so it is a slow process restoring trust, but both partners have to be willing to work at it. It can be frustrating sometimes for the person who is the perpetrator because they're like, we're only focusing on this one part of it, but there's so much more to it. And it's like, yeah, there is a lot more to the situation or what led you here than just this affair. However, this is what's like in the front view. If we can't get past this, it's going to be harder to look at all the other things. And this is kind of blinding me. I'm just seeing this. I have to get to a place where I can move this down here so that my hands are free. I can see more clearly. I can take responsibility for my portions and whatever contribute to the relationship. But I got to be able to move this from here. And that can be hard because obviously the person who perpetrated is seen as the bad guy, and it's really sticky, really messy, but a lot of couples work through these things and they're better for it. Some people, they have a really hard time doing that. So again, work that you will for sure do. but it is not easy work. It is hard work. And you have to have people who are willing to stick it through, willing to have the hard conversations, to hear the things that are hard to hear. What I tell clients who are maybe an individual client and they're coming in telling me, I found out my husband's cheating or I found out my wife cheated. I always tell them, do not find out the nitty-gritty details of what happened between them and the other person. The fact that you know that there was some level of cheating is enough. You don't need to know all the details, because you know what happens? Those details stay in your mind. And if you choose to stay with that person, you're stuck with all that information in your head. And that's not going anywhere. It pays rent. It stays rent free in your mind. And so I always encourage clients, like, don't do that. And for my ones that do, I'm like, why did you do that to yourself? Because it affects their intimate life with their partner, assuming they decide to stay. Those are things that they remember, and they're like, you did that with her. I can't do that with you. You told her you loved her. Now I don't believe if you ever loved me, all those things, right? And it just makes it more difficult in the moving forward. And again, it's more trauma for the person who's been perpetrated on. It's more trauma. You don't need any more trauma other than the news that you found out about someone cheating on you. And it just makes it never better. It always makes it worse. So my little piece of advice, if you have clients that have found out, like, don't, the nitty gritty details of what happened in their relationship is not necessarily at all beneficial or helpful. The more you know, probably the more harmful it's going to be in that regard. Okay. And again, I know for some of you are like, well, it's important. Like, I don't want to be lied to anymore. It's like, whether it was they cheated on you one time or a bunch of times, with the same person. Now, if it was multiple people, you might need to know that for your own health and safety and all those things. But all the ins and outs of what was happening is irrelevant, because the damage has already been done. You cheated. So anyways, that's just a little piece of advice for you when you're working with people who are dealing with this situation. It can be very difficult. It's very sensitive. Giving clients the space to have maybe these hard conversations with each other in your office, and then, that way they can release it, give them work to do outside of the office. Couples going through this might benefit from their own personal psychotherapy as well as their couples therapy to kind of work on what was going on that got us here. No marriage, like I said, is hunky-dory, perfect, love each other, everything's great, and then we end up in this situation. Usually there's some sort of things that are happening. Okay. And trying to regain intimacy again can be really hard. Sometimes after an affair, the couple will be very intimate all the time as a way to kind of like take back the situation. And then that might die off as a result of like, now I'm feeling very wounded and very hurt. And it's hard to have intimacy with someone that you don't trust. It's hard to be close with someone in that way and vulnerable with someone in that way when you don't trust them. It feels unsafe. So, that's just some information on affairs. For couples, and sexual intimacy in general, right, is important. And I mean, having intercourse and having sex in a marriage is important. And when it stops happening or isn't happening, it can clearly create some issues. For a male, and this is very stereotypical, but the closest a man can be to a woman is literally in physical intimacy. There's no other, that's the closest he can be to a woman. And for men, sometimes it's hard to connect emotionally, but physically they can be very close and in a very intimate situation with the female and feel very connected. Not saying sex is the only way a man can connect. I'm just saying that is a way to feel close and intimate. And so this is where it's really important that we are just mindful of making sure this is happening in relationships. Of course, not by force or anything of that nature, but if it's not happening, why it's not happening. Maybe there might be transitions of parenthood. Having kids ruins everything. Just kidding. I love kids. I have a bunch, but it's a big transition going from no children to children. Your body's different as a woman. you're tired, you might be nursing. I mean, everything's different. It's icky. Even pregnancy feels a little different when it comes to intimacy. So then you transition to kids. Maybe you got a kid that sleeps in your bed. Then you add another kid, and that adds a whole other element. I think what we have to remember is the marriage has to come first. If the marriage doesn't come first, there is no marriage, right? And so that could be a reason why sex changes or looks different. Sex changes as we age. Our bodies change. We've talked about this. There's hormonal changes. We're not spry and 20 anymore. We physically look different, physically feel different. And so it requires some level of communication and conversation. And oftentimes people don't talk about sex, and it needs to be talked about because it's important. It's one of the reasons why people get divorced. We got to talk about it. And so whether a couple comes in together and this is the safe place because they feel uncomfortable talking about it, or someone comes in individually to talk about it, this might help them to talk to their partner about it. Lastly, there could be people who are childhood trauma survivors. They've experienced sexual abuse or things of that nature, or sexual assault at some point in their history. And it might be really hard for them to discuss it, or they maybe remembered it at some point in their adult life and it's kind of triggering them. They have to talk to their partner about what's triggering them so those things don't trigger them any longer when it comes to intimacy. Most partners will be very understanding if something is very triggering and maybe not touch a person a certain way or do a certain sexual act together because it brings them back to a place that is not good. But people will keep doing things that you don't like if you do not tell them what you do not like. What do you know? So encouraging clients to mean what they say what they mean. Yeah, it could hurt someone's feelings if they find out you've been doing this thing to them all these years and it makes you feel like it was maybe somebody who used to abuse you, but they're not doing it not knowing, right? They're doing it not knowing you don't like it. And so, this is the opportunity to speak up and tell them, hey, it's not you, it's me. I should have said something, but now we know, can you please not do that anymore? That might result in a better intimate life with a couple, right? But it requires a lot of communication, a lot of conversation, a lot of talking, and it's something people feel uncomfortable with. And this is why, for you guys, as you some of you might be young parents, some of you might not be parents yet, but with your children, it's good to talk about sex very normally so that when they get older, they can talk about it normally and they can understand what's going on in their bodies and there isn't shame attached to it. And it's like a conversation. Like, why wouldn't we talk about it? It's part of life, obviously in an appropriate and age appropriate way, but it's part of life. We talk about things that are part of our lives. Okay. I hope this information is helpful. EFT, emotional focus therapy, is a form of therapy that is great with couples. If that's something that is of interest to you, I think Dr. Nab, he's like specialized in it. There's a great book by Sue Johnson. It's called Hold Me Tight. And it's like about emotional focus therapy and working with couples. A great read if you ever got a chance. But it talks about some of the things that happen with couples. And one of them is betrayal. Betrayal is really hard, but it's something couples can work through and get to the other side. So I hope this is great information for you. I hope you have a great week. Talk to you soon. Take care.